Welcome to Paranormal Teach. Today we are jumping into a tutorial exploring how to use the Spirit Chat and other text-based tools for spirit communication, including devices like the Ovilus. These tools are designed to translate environmental fluctuations into words, giving investigators a structured way to capture potential responses from the other side. Think of them kind of like a little linguistic compass pointing toward meaning in the swirl of energy around us. The Spirit Chat works by analyzing environmental variables, device sensors, or randomized word banks to generate text that may correlate with spirit interaction. It removes the ambiguity of audio interpretation and instead presents responses in a very clear written form, which makes reviewing evidence easier and allows for patterns to stand out during longer sessions. This also makes them wonderful tools for beginners who may still be working on their spirit box listening skills. The Ovilus and similar devices function on a similar principle, so this tutorial will guide you through how to use those as well if you're not using a Spirit Chat. They convert changes in electromagnetic fields, temperature, and other ambient shifts into words pulled from a built-in dictionary. The idea is that spirits can manipulate the environment enough to select specific terms, allowing them to communicate more directly than through traditional EVP alone. Today's video is less of a traditional step-by-step tutorial and more of a guide on how to properly use tools like the Spirit Chat and text-based communication devices. These devices are incredibly simple to operate on the surface. In most cases, you just turn them on and they immediately begin generating text responses. Because of that, the real lesson isn't in how to turn them on, but in how to use them correctly, responsibly, and with good technique. One important detail to remember, especially with the Spirit Chat, is that after you turn it on, the device cannot be moved while in use. Any movement can create misfires or false readings, since the program interprets environmental fluctuations. Even a slight shift can look like meaningful energy when it's really just mechanical disturbance. Keeping the device absolutely still is essential if you want to gather reliable data. And that's really the heart of today's explanation. Just because these tools are simple to power up and get started with does not mean that they are simple to use well. There is a lot of technique involved, from the kinds of questions you ask to the energy in the room and your intention. Every detail affects the quality of communication you can achieve. We'll be going over what to do, what not to do, and how to make sure you're creating the best possible conditions for authentic interaction. These tools can be so powerful when used correctly, but they require patience, steadiness, and a clear understanding of how they behave. So instead of demonstrating the buttons, we're focusing on the part that actually matters with these devices. The practice, not the power switch. Let's get into it. The first thing that I suggest is opening your communication session just as you would with any other method. Set your intention, introduce yourself if you're working with a spirit who doesn't know you, and then take a moment to explain the tool that you're using. Spirits typically respond better when they understand the format of the communication, and text-based devices, or any paranormal equipment for that matter, are not always intuitive for them right away. I've found that these tools come with a bit of a learning curve on the spirit side. Early sessions may feel really scattered or random, not because there's nothing there, but because the spirit may still be figuring out how to manipulate the device. As they get practice, you'll notice the responses becoming more contingent, more direct, and more relevant to your questions. When I'm working with a spirit that hasn't used a device like this before, I usually try to explain it in simple terms. I tell them something like it works like an electronic dictionary, where their influence on the environment will help them pick words from a list. This helps frame the tool in a way that's easy for them to interact with, and it often speeds up the adjustment process. So do not worry if your first few sessions seem chaotic or totally random. That early randomness can be normal, but with patience, clear instructions, and consistency, the communication does tend to sharpen and become far more meaningful as the spirit becomes familiar with the tool. After you've opened the session and explained the device, I then begin using it much like I would a spirit box. Ask a direct question, then wait for the response to appear. Keeping your pacing steady is really important. Rapid fire questioning can totally overwhelm the interaction and can make it really unclear for both you and the spirit what they're supposed to be responding to. When you ask 3 or 4 questions in a row and then they drop a one-word response, you don't know which question they're responding to, and at that point you are guessing, and you could be guessing incorrectly. So I sit and wait. I ask a question, and I give a clear, intentional pause and give the spirit as much time as they need to work with the device. I always suggest recording every session in some form. Whether that's through a voice recorder, a camera, or even written notes, documentation becomes priceless once things start moving quickly and they start to get better at using the Spirit Chat. These devices can shift from quiet to fast-paced in a heartbeat, and it's easy to lose track of the sequence of messages in the moment. Having a recording allows you to go back, review, and identify patterns that you may have missed when you were initially listening. Sometimes the context of a word only becomes clear when you look at the full timeline. Other times, you'll discover you actually received more than you realized while you were focused on the conversation itself, and there may be points where you realize that you totally misinterpreted something in the moment, and you want to go back and clarify that. Good documentation turns a simple session into solid evidence. It lets you stay present during the communication without worrying about forgetting details or analyzing things, and it gives you something reliable to revisit whenever you need clarity. One mistake I see made all the time with text-based tools is the urge to force meaning into words that don't actually make sense. It's completely normal to receive a non-contingent response every now and then. These devices do pick up environmental interference, learning curve misfires, and moments where the spirit may not be trying to communicate at all. They may also not have the word for what they're trying to say, and they pull out something that is close. That doesn't mean that the tool is broken or your session has failed. It simply means that not every single word is a message. What you don't want to do is take a random or irrelevant word and twist it into something that fits the narrative that you wish you were getting. When investigators do this, it can create a whole storyline that is not the spirit's truth. The desire to connect with a particular spirit can be powerful, especially for haunted doll collectors or people who have spirits in their house, but it shouldn't outweigh accuracy, discernment, or honesty in your interpretation. If a response doesn't line up with your question, accept it as exactly that, a non-contingent response. Move forward, ask your next question, and allow the conversation to unfold naturally. Authentic communication does not need to be forced, and real evidence never comes from trying to make puzzle pieces snap together where they don't belong. Staying grounded, patient, and truthful in your interpretation is what ultimately leads to meaningful sessions and stronger communication and connection in the long run. Another thing to watch out for is what I like to call case building. This happens when someone takes one or two words from the device and starts crafting an entire narrative or backstory around them, even though there is not enough evidence to support that conclusion. A single word can be interesting, but it can also be vague, symbolic, unrelated, or simply a misfire. These devices are never going to be 100% accurate, and neither is any spirit communication method. When you start building an entire storyline from just a few fragments of communication, you risk drifting really far away from what the spirit is actually trying to communicate with you. It's so tempting to fill in the blanks. In fact, our brains love to do this, especially when you're eager to understand who you're speaking with or what their history might be. But without real evidence, those blanks become guesswork rather than genuine communication. Good investigation means letting the data stand as it is. If you receive a name, ask more questions to confirm it. If you receive an emotion or a place, look for multiple responses that connect it to the session. Let the story form slowly and naturally, supported by repeated, consistent information instead of isolated words. Case building not only creates false leads, it also makes it harder to distinguish real communication from coincidence. Staying disciplined keeps your sessions grounded and ensures the entire narrative that eventually emerges, if one does, is built on actual interaction rather than assumptions or beliefs. This is exactly why I think it's so important to stick to a direct question and answer format when using tools like the Spirit Chat or the Ovilus. If you simply turn the device on and let it run without any structure to your session, you do kind of lose the ability to tell whether a response was actually contingent on absolutely anything you asked. Without that anchor, it becomes incredibly easy to drift into interpretation and start building narratives from random words. This is one way that I've seen people actually get really scared because they start to get a series of words and they formulate a really frightening narrative around them, and that may not be the case of what the spirit is trying to illustrate at all. Direct questions create a clear framework. You ask something specific, then you look for a response that aligns. If it doesn't align, you mark it as non-contingent and move on. That structure protects you from accidentally shaping a story that isn't there and helps you identify genuine patterns when they do appear. But if the device is just running freely, your brain naturally starts to connect dots, even when those dots were never meant to connect. A handful of unrelated words can suddenly look a lot like a message or a warning or a backstory or even a threat, not because the spirit is communicating, but because there was no question guiding the context. Keeping the session intentional, steady, and question-driven gives you far more reliable evidence, clear communication, and a much stronger sense of what's actually happening. Structure is not restrictive with these kinds of tools. It's protective for both you and the spirit. Another thing to be mindful of, and something I do see quite often, is the excitement people feel when they first realize how easy these tools are to use. Because you can just turn them on and walk away, some investigators and haunted doll collectors will leave them running for hours, giving spirits free access to communicate whenever they want. While that sounds convenient and exciting, it comes with a serious downside. When you let a text-based tool run without structure or boundaries, you are essentially creating an open portal for anything on the other side to come through. It stops being a controlled session and becomes more like leaving your front door wide open all night. You don't know who's wandering in, you don't know what's influencing the device, and you lose the ability to maintain any kind of intention for the session. This is especially risky because these devices respond to energy indiscriminately. Without your presence, your direction, and your clear opening and closing procedures, the session can become very chaotic very quickly. It also blurs the line between meaningful communication and interference, making it impossible to separate genuine responses from random noise, from random spirits, and who you were talking to in the first place. Structured sessions exist for a reason. They create boundaries. They define who and what is allowed to communicate with you. They help you maintain control, clarity, and safety, and leaving the device on for long, unmonitored periods does not increase your chances of getting good evidence or good conversation. It only increases the likelihood of letting in something you never intended to invite. Treat these tools with respect, keep your session intentional, and always close them properly when you're done. Boundaries matter just as much in spirit communication as they do in the physical world. While I do love this tool, especially because interpreting a single word reply to a full question can be such a unique challenge, I've found that it works best as a supplement to another communication method for me personally. It becomes incredibly strong evidence when you're getting on-topic responses on both tools at the same time. And honestly, if the responses are completely opposite, that's telling too. Contradictions can reveal interference, shifting energy, our own interpretation being inaccurate, or that one of the tools is picking up something that the other isn't. Either way, the comparison gives you valuable insight. I personally really enjoy running mine alongside a spirit box. Because of the mechanics of them, they don't interfere with one another and they can be used together seamlessly. The spirit box can give you tone, pacing, emotion, and longer responses, while this text-based tool provides concise, literal words. When they echo the same themes, it almost feels like two sides of the same conversation. But when they diverge, you also gain information you wouldn't have caught with just one device. Using both creates a fuller picture, adds layers to your evidence, and helps ground your interpretation in actual patterns instead of your own assumptions. This pairing keeps your session balanced. The spirit box can give you the nuance, and the text tool can give you the clarity. Together, they offer a stronger, more reliable channel than either one alone. All that to say, text-based spirit communication tools like the Spirit Chat and Ovilus are powerful, simple-to-use devices that can provide meaningful insights when used thoughtfully. While they may seem easy to operate on the surface, effective use relies on structure, technique, and careful interpretation. And you have to remember that you are engaging with the spirit world, and that is not an easy task, no matter how easy the device seems to use. By conducting sessions in a direct question and answer format, recording your work, and avoiding the temptation to force meaning or build unsupported narratives, you create a safer and more reliable environment for communication. Using these tools in conjunction with another method, such as a spirit box, can strengthen your evidence, allowing you to cross-check responses and gain a clear understanding of the messages being conveyed. Consistency between tools can reinforce the accuracy of the communication, while contradictions can also provide important clues. Ultimately, these tools are most effective when approached with patience, respect, and mindful structure, helping you engage with the spirit world safely and purposefully. Thank you for watching. I hope this was helpful. If you are interested in more paranormal tutorials, haunted dolls, paranormal investigations, and more, please subscribe, and we will see you next time.